You just have to be able to do things without seeing an immediate reward. Like if there's one meta skill that overshadows all of this, it's your ability to delay gratification. Is to delay a moment of reward. And I will read you the quote that Layla had framed and put in my office. Ask the girl, shoot the shot, launch the business, run the ad, quit the job, take the risk. Because when you're 85 years old and on your deathbed, you're not going to wish you had fewer crazy stories.
I'm a big believer in a lot of the Stoic virtues. And a lot of that just comes down to having your opinion of yourself be all that is required. And so it's like living for the future version of yourself and letting that person be your ultimate judge.
Most of the things you need to do, you already know what to do, and you delay doing them under the guise of having a better plan. But the reality is that your plan is always going to change as soon as you get new information. And so the point is to start, period, and learn.
You can't both say that you cannot admit deficits and say you're awesome at the same time, in my opinion. Like, I can't say like, I suck at all these things and then also be like, I'm the best. Like, you can't do it. You either like, you suck at all these things. And I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is like, the more you learn about something, the more you realize you don't know.
I love this from Andy Frisell. He said, personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. And so I think like, you want to be a fucking rebel, be excellent and do it for you. Like, you want to stick it to the man now, just be great.
Breaking down, what does this word mean from a behavior perspective? So it's really hard. Like, I think the reason that so many people are confused and they have a hard time remembering things and understanding complex topics is because they have lots of words in their heads that they have not defined. I really mean, like, I truly believe that, which is why every book that I have begins with a definition of terms, which is like, this is what an offer is. This is what a lead is, right? These are what this means, right? And until you have that, you're basically making face noise. Right? Like if I say leads and you perceive that as something different, then we can't actually have a conversation because we're not talking about the same thing. For me, defining patience was helpful, which is figuring out what to do in the meantime. Like, that's patience. Like, we're like, I'm not patient. It's like, no, you just need to figure out what to do in the meantime. That's all. Like, you and I are being patient on all the investments that we made last year while we're having this podcast. Like, they are happening. We're figuring out what to do in the meantime. So we're being patient. And so it's like, patience feels bad when you're focusing on it, but if you're not focusing on it, then patience happens by default. Like sadness, for example, like that was really helped me define, figure out, just even defining the word in terms of operational perspective, helped me get out of those funks faster, which is sadness comes from a lack of options, a perceived lack of options, which is why it feels like hopelessness. But if it comes from a perceived lack of options, then it means that you solve that with knowledge, because it's perceived lack of options, which is an ignorance problem, which means it's solvable, which all of a sudden gives me something to do. So then all of a sudden I do have an option, and then you can get out of the funk. And like anxiety is the reverse of that, which is I have many options and I don't know which one to pick, which means I don't have priorities. So like you solve sadness through knowledge, you solve anxiety through decisions. And so like helping me just spell those out to myself, I'm like, I feel anxious. Okay, that means that I have lots of paths and I need to make a decision. So which one am I going to decide so I can get out of this bad feeling? If I have sadness, great. What do I not know? Okay, now I have to go figure that out. Great, I have something to do. And so that like I think these are like mental models around using emotions to fuel the behaviors that you want. To operationalize something, it is simply going back down to, when I say I'm confident, what does that mean? It's not a feeling. It's not what other people say about you. Like, none of that is measurable. Like, how much, like, what is measurable? It's a percentage of likelihood that what I say will happen, period. That's what it is. Now, what you'll also find is that there are a lot of words that mean the same thing. And that doesn't mean that the concept wrong. It's just the fact that English or whatever language you learn usually has a melting pot of like, well, this is the version of the Nordic word, and this is the version of the Hindi word, and this is the version of the French word. And they're all in the lexicon, but most of them more or less mean the same thing. And so getting away from words meaning what the dictionary tells us it means, and just say, what does it mean to me in terms of what I can do with it? Then I think makes navigating life a lot simpler, because the only thing we can control is our behavior. And so if we define the words in terms of what we do about it, then these all become things that we can control and can change our lives with.
I think most people have the potential to be exceptional, and because most people are peculiar in their own way. They just stifle that
because they want to be accepted by most people, but in so doing, never accomplish what they want to do because they conform. Everything is removing the limitation, right? It's like, I want to get to here. And so getting there is usually straightforward. It's the obstacles that are all the things that people put in their own way. Like, it's not about being intelligent, but about being like hardworking, right? It's like, if you build your identity around that trait, then you can always do more of it. Like, you can always work harder. You can always put extra reps in, et cetera. And I think if people build that trait as their identity and where they get their self-esteem from, then it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle, but they're the ones who are in control of it rather than the outcome. It comes down to truly valuing your opinion of yourself more than other people's opinion of you. I think it's vision of what you actually want to do. Is like, where do you want to go? Because you can have somebody who works really hard at building a restaurant, like one single store, and you work really hard at building an app that's going to change the world. The amount of hours and effort that go into building an amazing restaurant and that are probably about the same, but the amount of impact is disproportionate on something that can go to gazillions of people. So I think you have to have some level of vision, and that comes from the people that you're around.
The real world's very different from school, which you've already, if you're watching my stuff, you already kind of have an idea about that. But I want to give you the behavioral definition around it, is that with school, you have very clear directions and a clear outcome with a clear timeline, and you get a grade immediately. So that's kind of like the reward or feedback loop, right? And sometimes it's pop quiz, same day, next day you get the feedback loop. But the thing is that the world is completely opposite of that. And so the thing is that beginners are paralyzed to make a decision because they assume the real world works like school and only has one right answer. But reality is that there are many right answers with only one wrong answer, which is doing nothing.
I think like confidence without evidence is delusion. And so the idea that you aren't confident if you don't feel confident right now is okay, because the question is, what are you trying to be confident about? Like, confidence as a word, right? So if we can define terms, is the percentage likelihood that you have that what you think will happen or will happen, right? Like in statistics, like, what is our confidence score on this metric, right? And so the same thing applies to a person. What is our confidence that when Johnny says he will do this, it will happen? And so we have our own confidence metric for ourselves, which is a percentage likelihood that we will do what we say we're going to do. And so the way that you can increase that confidence is to have more evidence that you've done things when you said you would do them in the past. And so I think it's about looking retrospectively and thinking, what story can I tell around this data that would give me more evidence that I actually do have some of these traits that I didn't think about?
Fear of not making it work, fear of other people's disapproval who don't matter anyways, that you aren't cool anymore, or because you don't show up to social events, or because you don't blow money on stuff that doesn't matter anymore, or you're not wearing the brands that they think are cool. Is all of that worth you for the rest of your life having the crushing feeling of mediocrity, knowing you could do more? It's about what you do, not what you say you're going to do, how much you want the outcome from what you're doing, how much you think you deserve the thing that's going to happen after you do it, or how hard you try. Because one, no one cares. Two, reality doesn't care either, because the only thing that matters that you can control is input.